Hey squirrels, I apologize for not reading yesterday. By the time I thought of it, I had already taken my teeth out. And even if y'all didn't see me, you could. I can't stand to hear myself talk without my store-bought teethers in. Here we go. Now we're on chapter 14, I think. I thought we were on 14. We were on 13. At 3 o'clock, new impressions. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all the fashionable world at Nice may be seen on the Promenade des Anglais, a charming place for the wide walk bordered with palms, flowers, and tropical shrubs is bounded on one side by the sea and on the other by the Grand Drive lined with hotels and villas, while beyond lie orange orchards and the hills. Many nations are represented, many languages spoken, many costumes worn, and on a sunny day the spectacle is as gay and brilliant as a carnival. Haughty English, lively French, sober Germans, handsome Spaniards, ugly Russians, meek Jews, free and easy Americans all drive, sit, or saunter here, chatting over the news and criticizing the latest celebrity who has arrived, Ristori or Dickens, Victor Emmanuel or the Queen of the Sandwich Islands. The equipages are as varied as the company and attract as much attention, especially the low basket barouches in which ladies drive themselves, with a pair of dashing ponies, gay nets to keep their voluminous flounces from overflowing the diminutive vehicles, and little grooms on the perch behind. Along this walk on Christmas Day, a tall young man walked slowly with his hands behind him and a somewhat absent expression of countenance. He looked like an Italian, was dressed like an Englishman, and had the independent air of an American, a combination which caused sundry pairs of feminine eyes to look approvingly after him, and sundry dandies in black velvet suits with rose-colored neckties, buff gloves, and orange flowers in their buttonholes to shrug their shoulders and then envy him his inches. There were plenty of pretty faces to admire, but the young men took little notice of them, except a glance now and then at some blonde girl in blue. Presently he strolled out of the promenade and then stood a moment at the crossing, as if undecided whether to go and listen to the band in the Jardin Public or to wander along the beach toward Castle Hill. The quick trot of ponies' feet made him look up as one of the little carriages containing a single young lady came rapidly down the street. The lady was young, blonde, and dressed in blue. He stared a minute, then his whole face woke up, and waving his hat like a boy, he hurried forward to meet her. "Oh, Laurie, is it really you? I thought you'd never come," cried Amy, dropping the reins and holding out both hands, to the great scandalization of a French mamma who hastened her daughter's steps lest she should be demoralized by beholding the free manners of these mad English. "I was detained, by the way, but I promised to spend Christmas with you, and here I am." "How's your grandfather? When did you come? Where are you staying?" "Very well. Last night at the Chauvin, maybe. I called at your hotel, but you were out. I have so much to say, I don't know where to begin. Get in and we can talk at our ease. I was going for a drive and longing for company. Flo's saving up for tonight. What happens then? A ball?" "A Christmas party at our hotel. There are many Americans there, and they give it in honor of the day. You'll go with us, of course. Aunt will be charmed." "Thank you. Where now?" asked Laurie, leaning back and folding his arms, a proceeding which suited Amy, who preferred to drive, for her parasol whip and blue reins over the white ponies' backs afforded her infinite satisfaction. "I'm going to the banker's first for letters, and then to Castle Hill. The view is so lovely, and I like to feed the peacocks. Have you ever been there?" "Often, years ago, but I don't mind having a look at it." Now tell me all about yourself. The last I heard of you, your grandfather wrote that he expected you from Berlin. Yes, I spent a month there and then joined him in Paris, where he has settled for the winter. He has friends there and finds plenty to amuse him, so I go and come, and we get on capitally. That's a sociable arrangement, said Amy, missing something in Laurie's manner, though she couldn't tell what. Why, you see, he hates to travel, and I hate to keep still, so we each suit ourselves, and there's no trouble. I'm often with him, and he enjoys my adventures, while I like to feel that someone is glad to see me when I get back from my wanderings. Dirty old hole, isn't it? He added with a look of disgust as they drove along the boulevard to the place Napoleon in the old city. The dirt is picturesque, so I don't mind. The river and the hills are delicious. Makes me think of Dana. And these glimpses of the narrow cross streets are my delight. Now we shall have to wait for that procession to pass. It's going to the church of St. John. While Laurie listlessly watched the procession of priests under their canopies, white-veiled nuns bearing lighted tapers, and some brotherhood in blue chanting as they walked, Amy watched him and felt a new sort of shyness steal over her, for he was changed, and she could not find the merry-faced boy she left in the moody-looking man sitting beside her. He was handsomer than ever, and greatly improved, she thought, but now that the flush of pleasure at meeting her was over, he looked tired and spiritless, not sick, nor exactly unhappy, but older and graver than a year or two of prosperous life should have made in him. She couldn't understand it and did not venture to ask questions, so she shook her head and touched up her ponies as the procession wound away across the arches of the Paglioni Bridge and vanished in the church. She said something in French, airing her French, which had improved in quantity if not in quality since she came abroad. That mademoiselle has made good use of her time, and the result is charming, replied Laurie, bowing with his hand on his heart and an admiring look. She blushed with pleasure, but somehow the compliment did not satisfy her like the blunt praises he used to give her at home, when he promenaded round her on festival occasions and told her she was altogether jolly, with a hearty smile and an approving pat on her head. She didn't like the new tone, for though not blasé, it sounded indifferent in spite of the look. If that's the way he's going to grow up, I wish he'd stayed a boy, she thought, with a curious sense of disappointment and discomfort, trying meantime to seem quite easy and gay. At Avigdor's she found the precious home letters, and giving the reins to Laurie, read them luxuriously as they wound up the shady road between green hedges, where tea roses bloomed as freshly as in June. Beth is very poorly, Mother says. I often think I ought to go home, but they all say stay. So I do, for I shall never have another chance like this, said Amy, looking sober over one page. I think you are right there. You could do nothing at home, and it's a great comfort to them to know you are well and happy, and enjoying so much, my dear. He drew a little nearer and looked more like his old self as he said that, and the fear that sometimes weighed on Amy's heart was lightened, for the look, the act, the brotherly "my dear" seemed to assure her that, if any trouble did come, she would not be alone in a strange land. Presently she laughed and showed him a small sketch of Joe in her scribbling suit, with the bow rampantly erect upon her cap, and issuing from her mouth the words, "Genius burns." Laurie smiled, took it, and remember, that's how Joe's hat would be. You know, they took signs from how her hat was when she was writing. Laurie smiled, took it, put it in his vest pocket to keep it from blowing away, and listened with interest to the lively letter Amy read him. This will be a regularly Merry Christmas to me, with presents in the morning "You and letters in the afternoon and a party at night," said Amy as they alighted among the ruins of the old fort, and a flock of splendid peacocks came trooping about them, tamely waiting to be fed, while Amy stood laughing on the bank above him as she scattered crumbs to the brilliant birds. Laurie looked at her as she had looked at him, with a natural curiosity to see what changes time and absence had wrought. He found nothing to perplex or disappoint, much to admire and approve, for overlooking a few little affections of speech and manner, she was as sprightly and graceful as ever, with the addition of that indescribable something in dress and bearing in which we call elegance. Always mature for her age, she had gained a certain aplomb in both carriage and conversation, which made her seem more a woman of the world than she was. But her old petulance now and then showed itself, her strong will still held its own, and her native frankness was unspoiled by foreign polish. Laurie did not read all this while he watched her feed the peacocks, but he saw enough to satisfy and interest him, and carried away a pretty little picture of a bright-faced girl standing in the sunshine, which brought out the soft hue of her dress, the fresh color of her cheeks, the golden gloss of her hair, and made her a prominent figure in the pleasant scene. As they came up onto the stone plateau that crowns the hill, Amy waved her hand as if welcoming him to her favorite haunt, and said, pointing here and there, "Do you remember the cathedral and the Corso, the fishermen dragging their nets in the bay, and the lovely road to Villafranca, Schubert's Tower just below, and best of all, that speck far out to sea which they say is Corsica?" "I remember. It's not much changed," he answered without enthusiasm. "What Joe would give for a sight of that famous speck," said Amy, feeling in good spirits and anxious to see him so also. "Yes," was all he said, but he turned and strained his eyes to see the island which a greater usurper than even Napoleon now made interesting in his sight. "Take a good look at her for her sake, and then come and tell me what you've been doing with yourself for all this while," said Amy, seating herself ready for a good talk. But she did not get it, for though he joined her and answered all her questions freely, she could only learn that he had roved about the continent and been to Greece. So after idling away an hour, they drove home again, and having paid his respects to Mrs. Carroll, Laurie left them, promising to return in the evening. It must be recorded of Amy that she deliberately prinked that night. Time and absence had done its work on both the young people. She had seen her old friend in a new light, not as our boy, but as a handsome and agreeable man, and she was conscious of a very natural desire to find favor in his sight. Amy knew her good points and made the most of them with the taste and skill which is a fortune to a poor and pretty woman. Tarleton and tulle were cheap at Nice, so she enveloped herself in them on such occasions, and following the sensible English fashion of simple dress for young girls, got up charming little toilettes with fresh flowers, a few trinkets, and all manner of dainty devices, which were both inexpensive and effective. It must be confessed that the artist sometimes got possession of the woman and indulged in antique coiffures, statuesque attitudes, and classic draperies. But, dear heart, we all have our little weaknesses, and find it easy to pardon such in the young, who satisfy our eyes with their comeliness and keep our hearts merry with their artless vanities. "I do want him to think I look well, and tell him so at home," said Amy to herself, as she put on Flo's old white silk ball dress and covered it with a cloud of fresh illusion, out of which her white shoulders and golden head emerged with the most artistic effect. Her hair she had the sense to let alone, after gathering up the thick waves and curls into a Hebe-like knot at the back of her head. It's not the fashion, but it's becoming, and I can't afford to make a fright of myself, she used to say when advised to frizzle, puff, or braid as the latest style commanded. Having no ornaments fine enough for this important occasion, Amy looped her fleecy skirts with rosy clusters of azalea and framed the white shoulders in delicate green vines, remembering the painted boots. She surveyed her white satin slippers with girlish satisfaction and chased down the room, admiring her aristocratic feet all by herself. My new fan just matches my flowers. My gloves fit to a charm, and the real lace on Aunt's mouchoir gives an air to the whole dress. I probably slayed that. If only I had a classical nose and mouth, I should be perfectly happy, she said, surveying herself with a critical eye and a candle in each hand. In spite of this affliction, she looked unusually gay and graceful. As she glided away, she seldom ran. It did not suit her style, she thought, for being tall, the stately and Juno-esque was more appropriate than the sportive or piquant. She walked up and down the long saloon while waiting for Laurie, and once arranged herself under the chandelier, which had a good effect upon her hair. Then she thought better of it and went away to the other end of the room, as if ashamed of the girlish desire to have the first view, a propitious one. It so happened that she could have not done a better thing, for Laurie came in so quietly she did not hear him, and as she stood at the distant window with her head half turned, and one hand gathering up her dress, the slender white fingers against the red curtains was as effective as a well-placed statue. "Good evening, Diana," said Laurie, with the look of satisfaction she liked to see in his eyes when they rested on her. "Good evening, Apollo," she answered, smiling back at him, for he too looked unusually debonair, and the thought of entering the ballroom on the arm of such a personable man caused Amy to pity the foreplain Mrs. Davis from the bottom of her heart. "Here are your flowers. I arranged them myself, remembering that you don't like what Hannah calls a sot bouquet." Handing her a delicate nosegay and a holder that she had long coveted as she daily passed it in Cardiglia's window. "How kind you are," she exclaimed gratefully. "If I'd known you were coming, I'd have had something ready for you today, though not as pretty as this, I'm afraid." "Thank you. It isn't what it should be, but you have improved it," he added as he snapped the silver bracelet on her wrist. "Please don't. I thought you liked that sort of thing. Not from you. It doesn't sound natural, and I like your old bluntness better." "I'm glad of it," he answered with a look of relief, then buttoned her gloves for her and asked if his tie was straight, just as he used to do when they went to parties together at home. The company assembled in the long salle-à-manger that evening was such as one sees nowhere but on the continent. The hospitable Americans had invited every acquaintance they had in Nice, and having no prejudice against titles, secured a few to add luster to their Christmas ball. A Russian prince condescended to sit in a corner for an hour and talk with a massive lady dressed like Hamlet's mother in black velvet, with a pearl bridle under her chin. A Polish count, aged 18, devoted himself to the ladies, who pronounced him a fascinating dear, and a German serene something, having come to supper alone, roamed vaguely about seeking what he might devour. Baron Rothschild, private secretary, a large-nosed Jew in tight boots, affably beamed upon the world as if his master's name crowned him with a golden halo. A stout Frenchman who knew the emperor came to indulge his mania for dancing, and Lady de Jones, a British matron, adorned the scene with her little family of 8. Of course, there were many light-footed, shrill-voiced American girls, handsome, lifeless-looking English ditto, and a few plain but piquant French demoiselles. Likewise, the usual set of traveling young gentlemen who disported themselves gaily, while mammas of all nations lined the walls and smiled upon them benignly when they danced with their daughters. Any young girl can imagine Amy's state of mind when she took the stage that night, leaning on Laurie's arm. She knew she looked well. She loved to dance. She felt that her foot was on her native heath, in a ballroom, and enjoyed the delightful sense of power which comes when young girls first discover the new and lovely kingdom they are born to rule by virtue of beauty, youth, and womanhood. She did pity the Davis girls, who were awkward, plain, and destitute of escort. I knew that was going to happen. I'll stop right there. Left my phone in there. It's always something I forget to do. Oh well. At least I got part 1 in. I'll come back again today if I think about it before I take my teeth out. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. I'm not live today, but I will be tomorrow at 5. See ya. Love ya. Bye-bye.